Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a video covering a lot of new pads from Padsmith. It's going to be really an impressions video, but I think you'll get a lot of information out of this about how I felt with these pads in game. And so far what I'm noticing and things like that. What you can expect out of the pads, I think you will get out of this video. Now, what you need to know from Padsmith, the new pads, they come in two variants. What you see here is the Pro, which has the Alpha Cell V2 base. If you guys aren't familiar with the Alpha Cell V2 base, it is a mirrored finish on the bottom that does just suction to your desk. You really have to like peel the thing off when you want to remove it. And you can see even lifting up one edge and pulling, the pad just stays suctioned to the desk. So it's a really nice base that stays completely firm and flat on your desk. The firmness of the Pro variant is exceptionally firm, almost firm like a hard pad, but if you push quite hard, you can get some of that foam material to disperse and move. But again, you have to push quite hard. So the nice thing about that is if you're somebody who applies a lot of downward pressure and you don't want the speed of your mouse to change when you are maybe accidentally doing that, this is a pad that will feel very consistent and there is no slowdown when you are applying that downward pressure. You can think of an Artisan mid Raiden, but I think this is even more firm than a mid Raiden. So think very consistent and very speedy, even in those moments. The beautiful thing about the Genesis textile itself, this textile is very smooth to the skin. It is more smooth than a Saturn Pro. It is smooth like a Doodle Riz, if anybody has used one from the Whale or Laanda. It has that textile feel to it, but it's obviously a much different speed in the opposite direction. The Riz Control, this being more of a speedy pad. But again, just wonderful on the skin. It feels very silky, very just buttery smooth. So great on glide, great on the skin, and overall very consistent. The speed of this pad, I would say you're probably going to hear a lot of different things from different reviewers. I think it's going to boil down to a lot of people's play style and what they're playing and maybe how good they are. The pad is obviously noticeably quick on the uptake on dynamic. So if you are whipping your mouse around, it's just effortless. It feels very speedy like most hard pads. But if you are somebody who kind of like has maybe a high sensitivity and you have slower mouse movements and you're not applying a lot of pressure behind your movements or a lot of force behind your movements, the pad might feel a little bit more on the balance side. So think like when you really are whipping to somebody and you're starting to spray them, your mouse isn't going to feel like it's just like floating away from you. The initial friction is not that low like a glass pad, and static friction isn't that low either. But again, I would still put those slower, less forceful movements in the balance category, and then the force behind your movements, even, just the small fingertip and wrist movements, like think effortless, think speedy. It's really just when you're coming down to like that kind of short, precise tracking where you pick up a little bit more of that balance. So I think it is a beautiful mixture of speeds. I think it's a beautiful pad in terms of the textile. And if this had actually shipped in 2024 as opposed to 2025, I think this would have been my cloth pick for the best cloth pad of 2024. Again, the textile feels very tightly woven, very condensed, so it feels buttery smooth on the skin. And then mixed with the design, the performance, the base, and how consistent it is, it's just a fantastic pad. I have noticed a little bit of slowdown compared to how it felt out of the box, but I don't think I've had any additional slowdown with many, many, many hours of gameplay already on this particular version. The Medusa is only limited to 650 units. You'll see the other pad that is in the Genesis Pro lineup, I think, is not limited. Both the pads look absolutely amazing on my desk. The Medusa, though, I think is really a showcase of this evolution in the artistic ability of Conradi. You look at the elements of this pad, and hopefully they come through on camera, but first and foremost, that lighter gray color, like just throughout almost the entirety of the pad, is such a really nice shade of gray. But the elements that you can kind of see picked up in the background of this scene, these little darker grays that really come off as clouds in person when this is in front of you. It really sets the scene, adds this dynamic layer to the design itself. And then you have these kind of darker gray figures here that do look like men in war that have been turned to stone. I mean, it just looks very well drawn, and even the artistic layers and elements in the scales of the snakes and the cracks in Medusa's arm and just everything with her armor. Conradi has just done a fantastic job. I think, again, it's some of the best work to date, and limited to 650 units, a price of $49.99 for the Genesis Pro. I think this is going to go very quickly, and it's probably the one I would personally focus on the most. And this is the Crucible Pro. It has been modified from the original Surface, but it is a very interesting textile, one that you will never have felt before. It is something that is quite unique on the market, which I do enjoy. Again, design elements here pop on the pad itself. Looks fantastic. This is advertised as a balance pad, and I can definitely say this is more of an overall balance pad than the Genesis. So you're not going to have this silky, smooth, fast surface on those dynamic movements. It does have a bit of texture to it. What I do notice is that X and Y feel a little bit different on glide, depending on the skates you're using. But overall, they do feel pretty consistent in overall speed. These static movements, like these slow movements, like what we were referring to, you will feel a additional slowdown in speed in comparison to the Genesis. More, again, like straight down the balance side, and those open movements, those slow staticky movements, you never feel that magnetism effect. So it doesn't feel ever muddy. It's not like those control pads. I would say like this is kind of like a perfect showcase for what a balance pad should be. With forceful movements, dynamic can feel quite fast, not as fast as the Genesis again, and you will feel a slowdown because of the texture of the pad. But overall, it is, again, something that I think is like a perfect definition of balance. When you start using dots on the pad, you just have to be a little bit careful which dots you choose. The purple dots from X-Ray Pad feel fantastic on the pad because you pick up a little bit of speed. They're super smooth, so the texture kind of gets dimmed down a little bit. But when I swapped to the donuts, of course, you will pick up even more of that texture of the pad. You might not like that. It does feel ultra textured when you move to donuts. And when you move to the gray dots from X-Ray Pad, I think the Obsidian Airs or the Obsidian Air Pros, I forget which one's the purple, which one's the gray. But it feels pretty good as well, like the purples, but of course a little bit slower. And overall, it does actually pick up less noise than the default skates on the Vaxi, of course, less noise and less texture than the donuts. So you can get some really great combinations with a wide variety of skates. But overall, I think the pad remains what feels like a really straight down the middle balance pad with a variety of skates. I think a lot of people are really going to enjoy this pad because it does feel like something that's going to remain very consistent over time. And the base, again, being that Alpha Sol mid firmness, it's something that when you hunker down again, it just remains very consistent. So if you want kind of just that generally slower, more balanced experience, you like a textured pad, I would definitely look at the new Crucible Pro. One thing to remember, again, the pads do come in all solid colors if you don't want a design. The only problem is the solid colors do come in the SCR base variant instead of the Alpha Sol V2. I'm not a fan of SCR bases. I think they feel just rather on the more cheap side. To me, this is a base that was used by Lethal as well on the non-pro variant of like the Neptune. If it ever creases or folds in a wrong way, it can be hard to like get the pad to lay flat again. And just taking it out of the box, like the pad does have what feels like these little air pockets underneath the corners of the pad. It's like it just doesn't want to sit fully flush to my desk in the tippy tops and bottoms of the corners. Another thing that you should know is the SCR base does feel thicker and it does feel more comfortable. So if you want some extra comfort, you can definitely get it going to this. But it does have more give and more plush, so you can dig into it a little bit. I don't find it to really be adding control or a slowdown in speed when digging into the pad, like an X-Soft variant from Artisan. And one thing you should know is the all-solid color does feel much slower in the Crucible. To me, it turns a straight-down-the-middle balance pad into a control pad. You can see it just feels more muddy on the SCR variant in the all-single color, both on static as well as dynamic. Kind of a significant change. And to me, it just makes way more sense to get a super dope design for just an extra $15 and a better base. You can see here I've got the Genesis in the all-single color as well. Has the same SCR base, obviously, and the same issue in the corners. And it does feel ever so slightly slower than its Pro variant. Still a pretty zippy pad in the non-Pro, but I do prefer the Pro variant. And again, it just makes more sense. You get a super dope design, a better base, and overall what I think is a more consistent firmness to the foam of the pad. But Conradi has definitely evolved, and I think we can definitely say that those pads are pretty dope. If you don't connect with one of them, you might not like them, but I just think they look phenomenal. I do also have Padsmith's new glass pad. The glass pad is awesome looking. It's like this very vibrant pastel-y color. It's got the flower designs, the floral design that I think is also done by Conradi. I think it looks great, but I'm going to reserve my impressions for this for a glass pad roundup because I got a ton of new glass pads in. But so far, like, it feels good on overall glide with a lot of the skates that I have. I do have a hair, unfortunately, on my mouse right now. But overall, it does feel like a lot of the top tier glass pads on the market. Like, it's such a fine hair between a lot of the glass pads. So it's easier to do it in kind of a glass pad roundup format, and I'll reserve the impressions for that. But at least you guys can see how it looks on the desk. I think it is definitely a nice change from some of the waifu that we are getting recently. But that is going to be it for this one, guys. I hope it helped. If it did, please leave a sub to the channel. See you guys in the next review. Peace.